Maude is a graduate of Oberlin and the Neighborhood Playhouse, and received a conservatory certificate under Sanford Meisner, and has worked with Lee Brewer, obviously, and Moises Kaufman, and has worked at the Sundance Theater Lab and led Meisner workshops. I can't even begin. Athens, Vienna, Germany, and received a Village Voice Obie for her work in Doll's House. Is that correct? And as we sort of went through the litany of things that you can see, you should not let this residency pass without seeing the film version of Doll's House. It's an amazing piece of work. But we are here now specifically to ask Maude about her work with Moises Kaufman and the Laramie Project, especially in its early development. So I guess I know everyone has questions. But I will start by just asking one about what led you to want to work with Moises. I know you had worked with on Marlowe's Eye with him previously, and maybe talk a little bit about that process that then led you to be interested in Laramie, and we'll go from there.
Well, it's hard to know where to begin. You know? I'm 50. I've spent a lot of time in attics and basements in New York City. And I think for a long time I used to say that essentially I felt like I was sort of caught in a swamp between art and commerce. Didn't really feel like I was making art, and I certainly wasn't, there wasn't much commerce about it. But I think I was never somebody who was, I mean, I really was hoping to make art, whatever that meant to me when I went to school and pursued being in acting, and what that means to me now. And so I never was very good at the business side of things. And I think I felt like what was happening to me in my working life in New York was that I would meet people, and there were about 4 directors that I was working with, and between the 4 it felt like, okay, like this one I use my mind a lot, this work I use my body a lot, this one I use my heart a lot. Hope my soul's getting taken care of somewhere there. So at the time when I met Moises, I was, had a very small rent-controlled apartment that I'd lost and needed to put my stuff in storage, and he'd asked me to, I'd done like 5 auditions at his apartment for a Franz Kreutz piece, and I was doing babysitting at the time, and I always used to bring the 2-year-old with me. That was my chaperone. Didn't tell her mother that. And he offered me a part in that, and I was going out of town for the summer. I was 33, and so I didn't take that. And then I came back, and he asked me if I wanted to work on Marlowe's Eye with the Naomi Izuku play. Wasn't my favorite, but there was this great paragraph in there about Queen Elizabeth I that was reason enough to do that piece. And it relates to the issue of documentary theater because I did a ton of research about Queen Elizabeth. And that was a great pleasure. And the first couple weeks that I worked with Moises was a great honeymoon. There's a way of moment working where you would bring in and, you could say, devise theater, and we could do whatever we wanted to do. I had an enormous amount of freedom. And so then he was in the process of looking for the next piece, and we sort of spent a year. We would read through a lot of things, and wasn't getting paid really. And he was working on Gross Indecency, and then Gross Indecency made this big splash, and we actually were supposed to do Hedda together, and he changed his mind. And he's always been very canny, he's very bright, he's very talented, about a career path for himself, and he was looking for something, I think, more issue-oriented. And the idea came to the events that conspired around Matthew Shepard's death, and he called a bunch of us and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to Laramie, and we're going to do interviews, and we're going to put together a piece. And everyone was very like, wow. Well, trouble that we like? And will they kill us? And, Anna Devere Smith at that time, that was been an enormous influence, and documentary theater was in its early, in one of its heydays, and so off we went though, and I worked on the project for a year. Went to Laramie twice, once in the beginning and once at the close of the year. And at that close of the year, when we did a workshop at Sundance in the summer of that year that went on. And I felt like I had to leave at some point. The piece for me, it raised many questions about what I think theater is, what I wanted to do with myself as an actress, what I wanted to see on stage, what I think is truth and not. So for all these reasons, I'm very grateful for that experience. I think for me, and I think Laramie Project, I get a little royalty from it, which I'm happy about that. But I know it's done an enormous amount of good, and has been something that's opened up dialogue in a lot of places, especially in high schools. I think about an issue that needs to be talked about.
And when you were doing the table work and you're sitting around and reading the script that you're working on, I'm wondering how much of that was sort of acting and how much of that was imitation. So how much of that was you thinking that you needed to deliver this line, preserving the mannerisms and the manner of speech exactly as the person spoke when you interviewed them, and how much of it was, okay, I'm reading this as an actor reads the script, and I'm going to find this idea and discover this, come to this conclusion for my own. I'm just kind of wondering about
I think the vast majority of the table work was really a scrabble, a fight about which text was going to be included. And I don't think there was any fidelity to I think we may have described to people, oftentimes when we would, so if I came in with the text about a women's shelter lady, and I'm advocating for her, and I'm describing sort of what the scene was like when I met her, and at points I'll break off from what I'm saying, and I'll be like, and the tears were rolling down her face, and you can't believe it that when she said this, and then the radio came on, and so it was really much more of a. And so we were reading it with a certain kind of course, our own passionate advocacy for this text. It wasn't an attempt to replicate, because we were really, I would say we were trying to theatricalize things to get people to go, yeah, okay, that text is, okay, do I have a critical mass yet? How can I jazz this text up a little more to get it in? This business of documentary theater with live people, with people who are still living, is such a bugaboo. Because when I was doing the research for Queen Elizabeth, I wanted all those nuggets. But somehow, because I knew I couldn't have them, because I knew it didn't really exist, because she existed already in the realm of imagination. So then I felt like I'm bringing some truth to it in some way. But with something like the Laramie Project, I started to feel like, well, the truth exists here someplace, and what am I bringing to it? The non-reality? And somehow, I guess what I'd like to bring to the work is the imaginative reality, and the emotional reality, and not so much the factual reality. Play with those elements.
We've talked a little bit about whether or not people, the truth, even before we get to the table work, whether or not the people you're interviewing tell you the truth.
Sure.
And did you, I guess my question is, did you feel that, you say people are opening up, but when people were opening up, were they picking what they were telling you? Did they have agendas?
Of course.
Right.
How can people not? And when we spoke to people like Matthew's friends, of course. And when we spoke to Aaron's friends, and we spoke to people who, like somebody at the university who wants people to come to the university, and you speak to the local shopkeeper, and Yes, everyone has an agenda, always, all times. It's made me very suspicious of all interview processes. And one, just I was saying from my own life, because of Dollhouse, I've been on the other end of interviews quite a bit over the years. And I am really, it's a really weird struggle. You sit down with a journalist, especially if they're a nice person, and they're chatting with you, and they'll buy you a drink, and you suddenly realize that you're just saying things that you really wouldn't want to see in print. And you think you're just talking to them, and lo and behold, you're not. But you don't want to you don't want to just go, oh, it was really lovely. It was an interesting process. I was challenged. I'm very grateful for the experience. And you realize that suddenly is what starts to happen, because you start to feel like, oh dear, I can't really be honest here. And how do I speak honestly and at the same time not betray other people, not hurt other people, not betray myself? And so I think it's there in all interviews.